Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. I was a bit taken aback when an elderly woman requested a Brazilian wax, but couldn't turn her down as money is money. I watched in horror as she pulled up her dress and thousands of tiny mouths which all seemed to be smiling at me. Why did every doctor who saw me wear full biohazard gear? I thought my condition only passed through blood. I told my friends I could get us fake IDs for the club tonight and it wouldn't even cost us any money. It's super lucky that I found all these random women's driver's license hidden in my dad's sock drawer. When I heard of the mass shooting at my husband's workplace, I called him immediately, only to have a paramedic answer his phone. Ma'am, how exactly do you know the shooter? I couldn't find anything else, so I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. I bet Mom will be so proud of me for feeding my newborn sister. The phone blared and a monster's voice told me the news. We have your wife and kids. I knew I shouldn't have trusted Derek to come with me when I buried them. The employee handbook said no jewelry, but I was so excited about my engagement ring that I didn't think it would hurt anything. That was the day I learned how literal degloving could be. My hands tremble and tears run down my face as I write my last will and testament. I dip my finger into my entrails, but my heart stops before I can finish the sentence. As the unsinkable ship slipped beneath the waves, the young man smiled, knowing that his sacrifices had not been in vain. The Titanic would drag the wealthy to their watery graves, and even as a wreck on the ocean floor, it would never stop calling to them. I always laughed inside at the hypothetical scenario of time travelers saying World War I or World War II in response to a question asked by a World War I soldier. That wasn't until I met a time traveler asking if World War III had started yet. With the sun high in the sky, the sweltering temperature in the car easily jumped to triple digits while I, trapped in the back seat, could do nothing but scream for help and suffer. In a cold voice that gave me chills despite the unbearable heat, my 10-year-old said, "Now you know how Roski felt," before walking away. From the first moment that I saw you, I wondered how you tasted, how you smelled. The applicator that I found digging through your trash was not a great indicator. I was beyond irritated when I discovered we had run out of milk, as I had warned her she needed to be more careful. I slit her throat before heading out in hopes to find another pregnant woman to help satisfy my desire for fresh milk. Old Lady Daisy loved snakes and kept dozens as pets, so it was a sad day when she passed and they all had to be rehomed. As her body was prepared for burial, the merchant gasped as he saw several squirming shapes wither within her guts. The ritual would allow us to bring our daughter back, but only if we sacrificed someone else. We chose her killer, but when she opened her eyes and looked over, her first words were, "That's not him." Unlike us, our poor child will eat good food and live a life of luxury, the poor man said to his wife. "Are you sure he'll be reborn into a wealthy family?" the wife asked as the astrologer lowered their child into the bathtub. My mother explained that due to the rising costs in electricity, they had decided to replace my electric transport with a manual one. Tears streamed down my face as I gazed at the rusted old wheelchair that they now expected me to use. I had the cop's quote chiseled into my daughter's headstone as a reminder to all how he protected and served. There's nothing we can do because your ex isn't committing any actionable offenses. Oh, I don't like the taste of humans, the enormous, bulbous spider answered to my mumbling pleas. Continuing to weave the web over me, it replied, "I much prefer the fresh, giant flies that will soon be hatching from your body." I smiled as my child finally graduated. She was the first to survive out of the other 205 subjects. When the devil offered me a guaranteed lottery win in exchange for 1 year off the lifespan of every human on Earth, I accepted without a second thought. Waking up the next day to discover 80% of the population had mysteriously died overnight, I began to question if I had made the right decision. I went to a Halloween party the other day where we were told to dress in whatever we were most scared of. I was rather confused when I saw my friend's Asian grandmother dressed as a Japanese soldier. "Congratulations on your beautiful twins," the nurse exclaims as I cuddle both of my baby boys in my arms. Her smile fades as she continues. "However, due to our country's one-child policy, you're only allowed to keep one. Choose wisely." I chastise my son for feeding him scraps from the dining table, as he knows that I think it's unhygienic. I grabbed my elderly father's arm and dragged him back over to his kennel and forced him to eat the dog food that I had left in his bowl. I had everything lined up to leave, including divorce papers, all my documents, a woman's shelter to go to temporarily, when the worst happened. Just one day before escaping, my husband was in an auto accident, leaving him in lock-in syndrome, and leaving me free to do my absolute worst to him as retribution for the decades of abuse and assaults. A wealthy man approached me on the street and told me I could use his place to shower and sleep after he saw I was homeless. I arrived at his place, but the plastic wrap covering his furniture and carpets did not feel very homely to me. Because every one of computer's predictions had come true, we asked it what year humans would cease to exist. We were shocked when the screen displayed a simple 1945. Go outside to play, and I'll just tell your dad that we couldn't figure out the homework, my babysitter assured me. I knew the beating would be severe when she instead told him, I've been trying to get him to do his homework all day, but he didn't want my help. I could barely control my irritation as the elderly woman came over and placed her hand on my baby bump. I smirked as the last of her body was dragged inside my belly button and hoped that this would keep my son fed for a couple of days. I answered this creepy dude's Craigslist ad with my usual attentions. So I had him gagged and tied up pretty quick, watched him squirm while I told him how he would die. When I went to his bathroom to have a piss before I got my kid out of the car for the fun stuff, I found out he had a plastic sheet, rope, tape, tools, and everything already laid out on the floor. The International Meat Processing Facility was completely automated, breeding, raising, and processing trillions of cows, pigs, and chickens annually. Centuries after humanity fled to some distant planet, the forgotten plant continued to function without issue. Ever since I moved to my new house, I had dreams of killing people. When the sleep analyst told me I was a sleepwalker, I decided it was time to check the smell in the basement. My wife always told me that if I had to choose, I should save the baby. I heard my husband say solemnly to the doctor as my vision faded to black. Wait, baby? My partner smiled at me and proudly admitted that they provided the milk that was in my coffee. I almost vomited as my eyes were drawn to his chest and I could see the wet stains around his nipples. I returned to the ruined remains of my home with a haul of rats for that day's meal. Sure, this dystopia could have been prevented had steps been taken to improve the world, but then the rich wouldn't have made all that money. My friends all laughed and congratulated me when the pregnancy test turned out positive. Their laughter turned to screams as I lifted my shirt and they could see the thousands of parasites crawling beneath my skin. The girl didn't like how big her front teeth were, so she decided to get them fixed. Looking in the mirror, she squinted her eyes in concentration as she raised the nail clippers to her mouth. "Open up, it's the police!" we yelled through the door to surprise the groom with a night out before his wedding. But when we unlocked the door and walked in, we found him crying at his computer, wiping his hard drives frantically. Due to the recent food shortages, all crew members with birthdays between April 10th and May 10th are to report to the west wing of the ship to enter cold sleep for 25 years, or until the issue is resolved. Cold sleep, as it turns out, would not be invented for another 150 years. As a soldier, I've seen enough wounds to know what's not survivable. As a parent, all I can do is hold her and tell her how much I love her. One, 2, 3. My daughter counted, excited to play a little game of hide and seek. "That's it, sweetie. Keep counting," I said with tears in my eyes as I pulled back my revolver hammer, taking one last look at the bite on her arm. A sharp gaze pierced the boy as the figure urged him to read the passed note out loud to the class. With shaky words, he finally uttered the phrase, "That's not our teacher." After punishing her kid for her mistakes during their study session, the woman found an unalive note written in her kid's notebook. "You have spelled suicide incorrectly," said the woman as she slapped her kid once more. I drove the stake through my daughter's heart, as Dr. Helsing told me to. As the police loaded me into the cruiser, I noticed that Dr. Helsing's reflection didn't show up in the rear-view mirror. My husband got a distinctive tattoo on his neck so that I would always be completely secure with him, despite my prosopagnosia. I was, until the day I stumbled across his online store selling identical temporary tattoo stencils and dates with an unsuspecting woman. "The death card just means change," I assured my client as I read his future. It wasn't until I drew the Tower and the 10 of Swords that I understood how violently this man was going to die. People often say the first smile of a newborn baby is the cutest thing in the world. But I don't think I can look at my newborn son any longer, as he smiles at me with a full set of 32 adult teeth. When the man found out his wife had been abusing their little daughters, he made a plan to protect them from his wife. After they adopted another little girl, he convinced his wife not to vent her anger on their biological children, and they lived happily. After a night of watching scary movies, I truly believed it was a psycho killer breaking in when I pulled the trigger, and on my father returning home early, I tearfully exclaimed to the officer. Emerging from the room I was always forbidden to enter, the lead detective, ashen face, said, "You may have been correct the first time." "They're about to take you off life support. You need to wake up before it's too late." Daddy spent so much time watching his special movies that it seems like he loves them more than me. I bet Daddy will love me so much when he sees that I'm just like the strong men in his special movies, I thought as I looked at my baby sister and her swinger before raising the hammer above my head. Usually, I'm not this quick to tell people I can see the dead, but in your case, I urgently need to make an exception. Because the dead can see you. "Hey, bitch," groaned the spirit of the long-dead inmate. "Did you know we nickname each other around here based off of how we died?" "So, what do you think mine is?" she added with a sick smile, the pale moonlight illuminating the myriad of rotted bullet holes that littered her apparitional skin. I woke to our son's cries, and my wife mumbled that it was my turn to feed him before falling back to sleep. I winced as his teeth sank into my neck and cursed the vampire who had tainted our son with its unholy blood. Ever since Saturn's sudden disappearance, the public was actively demanding answers from the astronomers. But they could not explain it, just like Uranus' disappearance a week prior and Neptune's disappearance 2 weeks ago. My mother would always guilt-trip me by telling me that she'd probably off herself if I ever moved out. I realized she hadn't been lying after I came home from university to find her rotting corpse hanging from the baluster. "Mom, I can't stand the taste of milk, and when you force me to drink it, I get an upset stomach, diarrhea, and a rash all over my body." "Milk is good for you. You just need to drink more," she replied angrily, refilling my glass and sliding it across the table to me. I lived alone and prank called the police that a murderer was inside the house. Imagine how I felt after they escorted a man out in handcuffs. That stupid creep that's been staring at us girls in my neighborhood actually followed me to this old abandoned warehouse at the edge of town. Slipping out a side door as he anxiously entered the building, I quickly text my usual "delivery here" and run like hell, hoping I won't hear the screams this time. "You're under arrest for sexual assault of multiple patients," the officer said as he led the doctor out of the office. I looked down at my dog, thankful that I never left her alone with that monster. I watched in disappointment while his opponent repeatedly punched him in the face before he tapped out, as he had lost me almost $1,000. I instructed my 3-year-old son to tell his mother he had fallen off the jungle gym, as I didn't think she approved of the toddler fight club I had signed him up for. Please, officer, I'm begging you. Send someone. My ex has a knife and he's downstairs. For the last time, miss, you can call back if he actually does something, because if he hasn't hurt anyone, then I'm not sure what you're expecting me to do. And with that, our time together is coming to an end. As always, I would like to thank the writers who let me read their stories this evening. I hope you enjoyed these stories as well. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, and comment. As well as if you're interested in more shorts, I do have a channel, 242 Read Shorts, which will be in the description box for you guys, if you're interested in that. But as always, thank you for watching. Sleep tight, and don't let 42 bite.